Iranian athlete Elnaz Rekabi gained international attention on Sunday when she took part in a competition in South Korea without wearing a hijab, seemingly in defiance of her country's strict morality rules, which mandates women cover their hair. After this, it was reported that her friends and family were unable to contact her and were concerned for her whereabouts. On Tuesday, she posted on Instagram that she didn't wear a headscarf by mistake and it was not intentional.
Earlier this morning, she arrived back in Tehran, and there are concerns for her safety, indeed concerns that maybe she did not willingly post that Instagram post as well. Meanwhile, protests in Iran, sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini at the hands of morality police, continue across the country. And human rights groups estimate that around 200 people have been killed so far.
Well, joining us now to talk about this in more detail is Catherine Perez-Shakdam, Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, what do you make of what has unfolded with this athlete? I mean, she wasn't wearing her headscarf, as you mentioned in the introduction. Many people were seeing her as a hero in defiance of the morality police, but she has now posted saying that it was unintentional. But it's unclear whether that was actually from her own volition or maybe she was under some kind of duress.
I'm pretty sure that it was under duress. I mean, the regime has, this propensity to force people to apply, pressure, not just on the individuals, but their families as well. So it's very likely that her life was threatened, as well as that of her family. I think that her coming out without wearing the headscarf, which is mandatory in Iran, and could potentially, buy her jail time, or like what happened with Mahsa Amini, cause her death, by severe beating. I think it's quite clear. I mean, it was intentional. She was very brave in doing so. And thousands of women across Iran are doing the same very thing every single day. And it's impressive.
Yeah, I personally am just very concerned about the lack of Western vocal condemnation about what is going on. I mean, to me, it seems like quite a clear-cut moral issue. Many of these women are fighting for basic human dignity against a repressive, subjugating regime that barely recognises them as human beings. In that context, we have seen Western leaders comment and intervene in other things, but this one, there seems to be a level of equivocation.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? I think actually it goes beyond just, a feminist movement or even a revolution. I think it has to do with the fact that we need in Western capitals and in London to actually grasp the notion that Iran, number one, is, carrying this ideology which has breached into our borders. This is something that we're trying to discuss at the Henry Jackson Society quite vehemently. We believe that there's a threat to our national security by the very nature of the regime and the ideology underwriting it, which is basically geared towards export. Iran is just a convenient outpost for the Islamic Republic. It's not limited to. And my fear is that because we have been so complacent in not condemning strongly enough and not asserting, stronger sanctions or actions against the Republic, it means that, they feel entitled to push against our tradition, our belief system, and the fact that we stand for human rights and religious freedom. This is not an attack on Islam. This is to say that women have a right to choose the manner of their dress. They also have the right to not practice, should they choose to. But unfortunately, in the Islamic Republic, it doesn't work this way. And they do practice hostage diplomacy whenever we push against them. And I think there's a fear in our Western capitals that should we say something or do something that may offend them, they will do, something in retaliation, which they have done. They have arrested 20,000 people in Iran, among which dual nationals. And that means, Swedes and French and German and potentially Brits.
And it seems that Iran-made drones are also killing civilians in Ukraine. I wonder, looking at the scale of this protest movement that we've seen over the last few weeks, more so than something we've seen for decades, really, in Iran, could it actually lead to something material? Could it lead to regime change?
Yes, I do believe so. And I'm very glad that you bring this up, because by exporting the kamikaze drone to Russia, which are being used in Ukraine now, they literally entered our territory, Europe. So they're now operating. This is not an act of war per se, but this is an act of aggression against, against the West. And I'm worried that it's not going to be limited to. If you're looking now in Syria, Hezbollah, which is working with RSGC, is building runways for drones, those very drones, right at the border with Israel. Israel is a strategic ally of not only Britain, but also Western capitals. And that means that we're not looking after our partners' interests, which ultimately are our interests. Because what do we do when something terrible happens and we haven't been prepared? We haven't prepared against Russia in Ukraine. We're not preparing against the Islamic Republic. And unfortunately, because of the nature of the regime and the fact that thousands of outposts have, already in existence here, not just in the UK, but also, in the West, across, we have done nothing. So can we actually, sit here and say, well, we need to be careful? Maybe not. A defensive war, defending ourselves against the Islamic Republic would cost more than to actually maybe think of another solution. And I'm not talking about regime changes and military interventionism. I'm talking about discussing with our partners in the region solutions which would benefit our national security and prevent an escalation further.
Well, thank you so much. And please come on the show again, because this was a very fascinating and important conversation.